Welcome, I'm Deb Shepard. I'm your host of Spirited Straight Talk. Thank you for joining me on this amazing spiritual journey that we call life. You're in the right place and you didn't land here by accident. My intention is to help you learn to free yourself of things that are holding you back and create a life that truly makes your soul happy. I'll be talking about key insights and interesting topics to help you learn how to powerfully co-create with the universe. I will cover everything from turning your setbacks into triumphs, and my favorite, living your soul's purpose. Of course, I'll be connecting you with spirit, your guides, and the favorite one, of course, is your loved ones on the other side. If you're ready to truly stop spinning circles, and you're ready to harness the power to co-create an authentic life with spirit, then I hope you join me every week for Spirited Straight Talk. I want to welcome everybody. This is Deb Shepard. I'm here with Dana on Spirited Straight Talk. And our topic today is reincarnation. And this is a very interesting topic, subject to really understand. And I think you and I knew when we met, there was a connection. There was an immediate, I think I know you, but I don't know where that's from. And so there was something very familiar. And as we continued our relationship, we did get a past life, which I think we should share a little bit of that today.
Yeah.
But what I want to talk about is why I do believe in this and what you can experience from understanding a past life. And if you're on the fence with this, I totally understand. There are actually some statistics. Did I say that very clearly? Can you say it again for me?
Statistics.
There we go. 33% of American adults do believe in reincarnation, which is actually a bigger number than I anticipated, because even with all the clients I have, people sometimes don't know for sure. And I really respect that, because I don't think people should have to believe the way I believe.
Right.
But I think they're open to it, the idea.
When did you start believing in reincarnation? Because you were not raised that way.
No,
you
not
were
at all.
Raised very strict cult-like religion.
Yeah, very proud of that.
I mean, it's like
no
other.
I think as time went on, I just became more open to experiences. I was never the thought of, oh yeah, that's for sure. But I always thought, well, why couldn't it be? You know, it was just one of those things that I didn't have enough understanding of it, but I wasn't against it. Like, no, there's absolutely no way. And then as time went on, I still just sort of accepted these things. But then doing this work for so many years, and doing past life readings and having such intense experiences of things, there's no doubt in my mind that our lives continue. And it's what I teach. What I like to teach people, though, is if they're not sure about reincarnation, the other way I explained is that we can have multiple lifetimes in our current lifetime, because we live a long time and we have a lot of experiences.
3 marriages. And each one of those is a definite lifetime.
Yeah. And so instead of dying really early and coming back, I believe that we have a longer experience with this. So some of the things that I wanted to kind of share is if you think you've had a past life, and these are some of the things that we may randomly think, well, that's really interesting, well, that's weird, or that's cool, to kind of say, well, maybe this is a past life for you. And it's those times where we have those deja vus, you know, where you're just like, I feel like this is familiar. Or something.
It's almost like you're in a tunnel.
Yeah.
It comes on like you're in a tunnel and like, whoa, what just happened?
And you kind of stop for a minute and you're trying to register things. And it doesn't happen often, but when it does, you're just sitting there going, whoa. It's almost like a mind mix-up.
It is, yeah.
Like trying to
because you're like, I've been here before. Something's...
This familiar.
Yeah.
And it's really the feeling of feeling familiar. Say that 3 times.
Feeling familiar.
Yeah. What about, when, like you and I, we just said, when I meet someone, when we met, there was just something, I don't know. No, I do know. There was a connection from before. So when I say I don't know, that's not true. I didn't know it at the time, but as time went on, it was just this feeling and knowing, and it just came together so peacefully. And like you said, the previous relationships I've had, there were a lot of lessons and teachers. So at this point, I'm like, good, I graduated to something
something better.
Something that really comes together. And she's on a project. So I think those are the things that we think, I don't understand this, but, you know, we really do. One of the other things, have you been somewhere, like I know when I went to Florence, Italy, I knew where things were. It was just, why do I know some of this stuff? And what was really interesting is when my son and daughter went to Rome, or Italy, and actually backpacked across a lot of the European countries, when he went to Rome and went to the Colosseum, He never studied it. We never talked about it. He'd never been there. He knew the history without reading the history of the Colosseum.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And he was able to talk about things, and he's just like, oh, okay, how do I know these things? And so him, of course, living in this household, said, I think it was a past life.
Yeah.
And he's such a passive person. I'm sure it wasn't on the battlefield. I'm sure there was some other thing that he did there.
Mm-hmm.
So again, having that something feels really familiar. And we talk about Thomas sometimes about his food.
Yeah, my son.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Thomas.
Ever since he was a little guy, I remember it, by the age of 2, that he had very specific tastes that were not typical. So he would eat pizza or spaghetti, but that was not his favorite thing.
Which is what kids go to.
Yeah, that's like the kid food.
Yeah.
My grandparents, they would give him, they watched him at the time, and they would give him typical food like that. And he would much rather have sushi or Cajun food or spicy or...
Spicy wings.
The wings were his, from just a very young age. He'd rather have salmon and broccoli, have me fix fish, than pizza or
hamburgers and bread.
Yeah,
no bread,
stuff like that.
No bread.
He doesn't eat bread.
No.
He won't. It's just not his thing.
I wish that was my thing.
Bread and potatoes, he is not about that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting because that was not my family or our culture.
No.
Obviously, because my child liked that stuff and was open to experiencing it, I experienced it too. Mm-hmm. So,
but it's interesting how there's just that go-to kind of feeling
mm-hmm.
of there's just something about it that resonates. And we'll talk a few more because I want people to kind of go into like that. Yeah, that's happened to me. And mm-hmm. that's where I want to give these ideas to say, if this has happened to you, it might be a past life you're connecting to. Mm-hmm. Maybe these are some of the reasons why behavior and things mm-hmm. like that.
I think one of the things, too, that I experienced is when I was 15. So if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you've listened to my story. And I went through a conversation with somebody in my life, a cousin, who had gone through some pretty horrific things in her childhood. This is a second cousin on my grandfather's side, so not a first cousin or anything, but she talked to me about reincarnation. And
really?
What made sense to me was that there is just no reason why we have to go through these tough things without there being something else attached to it, because it made me feel like, and it resonated to the point because I felt like I made these choices, and that hit me. And I was like, oh, that's why I decided to go through some really tough things in order to learn.
Become enlightened, to grow spiritually, the shadow side mm-hmm. that we're going to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was confirmed in a Vedic astrology reading.
That's
where
right.
the stars were aligned and what my path was. And my path was to have no parent.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's when you start looking at the science of things.
Yeah.
How can all this be proven? And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more is, can this be proven, or how do we know, or
mm-hmm.
Things like that. The other thing I notice with relationships sometimes, if people are in a really toxic relationship and they know it in their head, but they continue staying with it, I think a lot of times it's a past life of abandonment or something that happened, and in this lifetime they're trying to figure out. And like we don't teach karma. We don't believe there's karma in the sense of a past lifetime.
Well, we believe in karma,
but just not the
Western version. Yeah.
Which means if you did something bad in a past lifetime, you suffer in this lifetime.
That's not it.
That's not what we believe. So you can go back to a podcast for that one. But what happens is sometimes we hold on to a relationship way too long because of a past lifetime of, did it not complete? Did they abandon you and you don't want to abandon them?
So that's dharma.
That's dharma.
So that would be, you're in a relationship until you complete that cycle, mm-hmm. which is probably why I could not leave my last relationship. I was in a terrible relationship for 11 years.
Well, 11, of course, is that spiritual number.
That's right. And I couldn't it's like I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how.
We've all been there.
And I just kept getting sucked back in, and until I was ready. And when I was ready, I was ready. And there was no going back, but it's interesting.
Yeah, that's why people will ask sometimes, like, should I leave? And I'm like, I would never tell anyone to leave. But there's also a lot more layers with that. However, it's the same thing as until you feel like you're done with that teacher, that lesson, that situation is when you can unlock it. And of course, I swept you off your feet, too. Also, I know you and I really like history pieces, like watching a movie or documentary about certain times. And I think we're drawn to those times because we've had a lifetime there. We've experienced it. We know something about it. And this reminds me, before I don't want to forget this, I did a past life reading for someone you know that was a client for a really long time. And when he went to look at his DNA, I'd gone around different parts of the world. His DNA was from each of those parts of the world.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And it was really fascinating to me. It was like, is there another connection?
So you did a past life, and then he shared his DNA with you.
Afterwards.
So he had, okay.
And it proved that every lifetime he had was those places that were in his genealogy.
Interesting.
His genetics. But I didn't give countries or places that were not in his DNA. Which is just another...
It is, yeah. Like you and I are both drawn to Scottish and Irish
very much.
History. So, and then when I had my DNA done, but also my lineage, so I had my genealogy done, there was so much history in Ireland. I didn't know how much.
Right.
Ireland and Scotland. I had an ancestor actually fight for Mary, Queen of Scots.
Which is so cool.
So, yeah. I
and guess who I'm related to?
Marie Antoinette.
So
let them eat cake.
Let them eat cake. So you look at all those kind of dynamics where people are really drawn to certain cultures, like Thomas with the sushi and the Cajun food, and you look at some of this. I don't think it's not at the age of 3 and 4. You know, you're not exposed to that, so this has to come from another period. It's also, we talk about languages, or like I've always had, years ago, I don't feel that way as much, but I always thought I had a connection to Russia at one time, and there was this real interesting connection where all of a sudden I started seeing things made in Russia. Someone spoke Russian, whatever, someone was going to Russia. And I found it interesting with those cases, and I did come to some understanding of it later on in my life, personal life. But it is, you're just like, why am I attached? I was even in Hawaii and found something made in Russia that I wanted. So,
wow.
What's the odds of that?
Yeah.
So all these things that we're talking about is, could they be connected to a past life? And I don't think that everything you're interested in is connected to a past life, but I look at people that have joined the military, or like I did a black belt. I wasn't attracted to doing martial arts. I did it for other reasons, but so many people are attracted to certain types of cultures and food and books and literature and music that I believe they're bringing from a previous lifetime. Anyway,
that's so cool.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because a lot of people now are believing in this, and they're trying to understand, and we're doing a lot more readings, and people are trying to figure out what past life is I'm bringing into this lifetime. So what I normally do when you set up an appointment, I go into what's called the Hall of Records, or the Akashic Records. And if this is some new thing, it's basically you go into a space on the other side of the veil, and you actually can download information with someone's permission to get the past lives or whatever lessons they're learning and things like that. I know it sounds really odd, but it does work, and that's how it works for me.
Well, you say download, but that's an easy way for people to understand, because you all of a sudden absorb all that information that you share with whoever is sitting with you. So,
and what's interesting is I won't know their story. I don't let them talk. So I will go into usually 3 or 4 of the past lives to get information. So I thought about a few of them that we could share, because I think that's what's interesting. Like, how does this work? One I'm going to talk about is one of my martial artist teachers. And I was doing work with him, and he was definitely kind of this fighter, warrior kind of guy, and loved the Asian connection and all those things. And when I did a past life, I said, I see an arrow going through your chest. Right here. And he opened, and this is in between your breastbones, since I'm pointing and no one is watching me.
Yeah.
I gotta give the visual.
Good thing to explain.
It's right here, and people are like, where? So it's like in the heart, but between the two chest bones. And he opened up his shirt, or pulled down his shirt collar, and there was a birthmark
Right there.
exactly where I had said it was. Of course, I
Wow.
didn't see him without a shirt. And so he goes, well, look at this. He goes, I believe that. And so that was a very interesting. So I've had a lot of that kind of stuff.
It seems like every time you do a past life reading, you share these things with me, little tidbits like, oh my gosh,
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know these stories. One of our clients, what was interesting with her, I knew a teeny bit about her. I'd been working with her. But when I started doing her past lives, I saw her being, I think it was in Japan. And she was a girl, and her parents wanted a boy. They taught her to speak languages or be able to interpret languages and be working for some of the royal family. And what they did, because girls could not be part of that, they basically wrapped up her breast really tight so that they thought she was a boy. Well, in this lifetime, she ended up with breast cancer. And she actually went to college to be a linguist.
Wow.
Linguist. So you look at how are those two things connected, but it made sense in that past lifetime. And she also had issues, and still does, with her mother in this lifetime. And in that lifetime, there was a parent that really forced her to do these things that she was working with in this lifetime.
Okay.
Do you remember the story of our friend that was here? And I did a past lifetime. And it was just out of the blue. We were sitting there talking, and I said, I'm getting a past lifetime for you.
Yeah, I remember she was struggling with a few things.
Right.
And was trying to get answers because there was a lot of health stuff going on. You did a reading. Do you want me to share it?
Yeah, because you were there. This was not a private session. This was
I know
us
a
talking.
lot of times when you're channeling, you don't
remember. That's why I thought you could share this one.
Yeah.
Because...
So I remember the details because I was just in awe. So you started sharing that in one of her past lives, her husband was like a Viking or would go and do these raids and then come home. But he had a brother. And the brother...
I don't remember this. I'm so glad you're sharing. Yeah.
Okay. So she was left back behind while he went and did his warrior thing. The brother and her had a special relationship, like a special friendship. And the husband, who was would
warrior.
go off to war, or conquer, I think, thought they were having an affair. And so he came home and he saw something that he misinterpreted, and she was pregnant at the time. You said that what happened was, even though they denied they were having an affair, he didn't believe them, and he killed her in front of his brother. So he cut her throat, but also before that cut open her stomach.
While she was pregnant.
While she was pregnant, and had her by the back of the hair, and I guess she had really long hair, and like cut her hair off and part of her scalp. Well, what came through this, she said, oh my God. She said she showed us her head. So she's had surgery because when she was born, she had a patch on her head that had no hair on the back of her head. And it never grew in, so she would try to hide it, but she had a huge patch on the back of her head with no hair. Mm-hmm. And that's how she was born. She was born with this. And she could not believe it. She was like, oh my God, I was born with this thing on my scalp.
That she brought this lifetime.
Right.
And this lifetime, she has all sort of stomach issues.
Stomach, yeah.
But I guess from that, she said it changed dramatically with her. And I'm not saying that I can promise your health will turn around.
Right. But just knowing. And understanding.
Yeah. And she was just like, wow. And I remember now, I'm glad you shared it because I knew I was thinking about the hair. I didn't think about the rest of it. And it is, you get these stories that people are just like, how is that possible? Mm-hmm. How, you're born. It's like the born with the
birthmark on the chest.
But the hair is even more intense to say, this is what, and I didn't know anything about this.
Right.
She didn't share anything.
Yeah. So that was an interesting one for sure. And so does it, when you learn your past lives or understand your past lives, if you're having issues, just understanding them might change the energy with what you're carrying?
We think about how many, you and I both had fear of drowning
I still, yeah.
You do.
I will carry that probably forever.
But we also know that when we figured out our past life is that you sent me over on the ship, and then you came over on a ship here to America, and you drowned.
Well, yeah, we did a past life meditation, and I got two lifetimes that were shown. And the first one was I was male, and I was a banker or a businessman of some sort I feel like I was in England. And I could see myself walking down the street, and I had on like coattails. And what I knew as I was walking down the street is that you had gone over to the U.S. on a ship and were waiting for me to join you.
I'm always waiting for you still.
Maybe
that's what that's about.
But that's my Mexican timing. I am Hispanic, and yeah, we're always late.
That's fine.
Anyway, so yeah, I that felt like reality to me. But when I came to come with you or to meet you, I drowned on a ship. It doesn't feel like the Titanic or anything like that. I mean, it doesn't feel like it was that important, but. But I did drown.
Ships did.
Lots of ships.
Yeah, so that's
sunk. Yeah.
Yeah. So
maybe I was on a little ship and sunk. I don't know.
When we were in the Outer Banks, there was a whole area of
sunken
ships.
Spanish ships.
Yeah. So
and then the other lifetime that I got. So I drowned, but the other lifetime that I got, I was probably 3 years old, and I was just a little girl with long blonde hair. And I was walking along the side of a creek and drowned, playing in the water. And I felt like I was found face down in the water for somehow.
Which is what happened to me when I was 2. I never put that together till just now.
Yeah, and I didn't know that when we did the past lives. I had no idea that you had drowned when you were 2.
Since we're talking about this, my parents were camping, and I was 2, and I walked down to the little lake. And ended up, a wave knocked me into the water, and they had to revive me. And so that's releasing that DMT, but the whole water connection for us is that...
No bueno for us.
We want to live and sit by it, but we don't want to be in it.
I want to put my toes in it, and that's about it.
And we're talking about fear. I had a client come, and she believed in the afterlife. She's had a lot of people pass. She was very spiritual, but she had this big fear of dying alone. Not dying, but dying alone. And I said, okay, so I didn't know all of that, but when I did her past life, one of them was, it felt like during the Roman time when Christians were put into prison and things like that. And I could see her in this cell that was, of course, cold and dirty and all that kind of stuff. And what I could see is, like, there was probably 5 people in this place that she was in imprisoned. All of them had died before her. And she was there, and everyone was there together. Well, when she died, there were only rats. Oh. So she was scared because there was no one there to be with her.
Okay.
And so when that story came through, she goes, okay, I'm okay now. And completely shifted that her fear in this lifetime had to do with the fear in a past lifetime. And that's where
just knowing
that
feeling that energy of what, because I think you really do connect with the knowledge.
Right.
I feel from all the past lives that I've seen you do.
Right.
And from my own experience, I feel like when you connect with that energy, you really know, you almost feel it. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
It does. Really. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's almost a relief, like when you are confused, like, why am I so drawn to this? And we're going to talk about that too. But I was recently, I've been teaching for a long time. A lot of what I teach is all about reincarnation, but it's really about our life purpose here.
Yeah.
And before I even knew about this therapist, I would talk about archetypes and teachers and the shadow side and all.
Well, you channeled all this.
All this, right?
Yeah.
I'm writing it all down. This is years ago, and I'm like, okay. Then I started hearing other people talk about it and started doing. Well, Carl Jung, that is a PhD. He worked with Dr. Freud. They split up. I started really reading his stuff more recently. And I was just like, wow, did I work with him? Did I channel him? There was just this, everything I've been teaching. And I wanted to be a psychologist, right?
Right.
So I'm reading all of his stuff and I'm like, wow, there is certainly a feeling of he really resonates with me. So I'm curious to go deeper in that. But right now it just made sense, like, oh, yeah, familiar.
So Carl Jung believes that we are all connected by an invisible grid, basically.
Which is what I believe.
Yeah. So he's very woo-woo.
Very woo-woo.
And
which is why probably Freud and him split.
Yeah. Yeah. So he really believes like that your dreams are connected to a higher source, that things that happen in your life are connected to a higher source, and he's very well known.
Right.
So when you say Carl Jung, people are like, oh yeah, archetypes.
Archetypes.
Yeah. But his belief system was one that we are all connected.
Right. And so when I'm reading, I'm like, I should have known. Did I know this dude?
You may have.
Was I an intern? What am I channeling him? Yeah. So again, when you read this stuff, it's like, how would I know this when I was never taught this? I never went to school. I never read anything about this. And it is like, I feel like it's just so aligned. So, that's the whole thing about realizing, is there more to your life than just this lifetime? The other thing is, what I think is interesting, and we've seen documentaries and interviews on this, is when kids are between 3 and 5 and they start remembering their past lives.
And can verbalize it.
Verbalize it.
Right, because that's the age you start to verbalize things.
And because they're recently here, they don't have all the confusion that as we get older and we're in our culture,
we filter stuff out. Yeah,
we start
denying our
everything. So these kids are like talking about what happened to them or what they did in a past life, and there is actually documentation now proving that they're able to go back to what that child was saying to prove that that person was...
James Leininger is one of them that we share in a lot of your classes, because they did a whole big series on it. Yeah. So we were able to show that.
And now with the internet stuff, you can do any kind of research, and I'm sure not all of it's right on, but really kids can also see spirits because they're not told it's not real. So these kids that come in, they don't have all the dogma and things that we pick up as we get older. So those are the ages that your child may be talking about. When I was little, I was your mommy. I remember my daughter saying that, I think I was your mommy. And I'm like, okay, So again, these kids are talking about it, and it really can be true.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also important to cultivate, or not cultivate, but to allow these kids to go through that experience and share.
Yeah.
Because
the ones where we're talking about, he was, I think, a minister, and they're like, we don't believe in past lives and all this, until they really dug deep and went, okay, I now believe this. So that's really an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So part of this, I wanted to talk about one more thing, and then about how to understand what your past lives are, or try to figure out on your own if you're not going to get an appointment or do any hypnosis, things like that.
If you can't get in to see Deb, we can schedule you, but in case you can, there are things you can do. Yeah.
The other thing I want to bring up too is what I've noticed when people have been reincarnated, and I do, well, most of us have, but I do their past life, I can tell that they've had multiple male lifetimes. And when they come into this lifetime, they're really they're more dominant or masculine energy, and they may do something that's more of a masculine job, like military, police officer. I think there's also a sense of sometimes being gay because they've been the male in so many lifetimes.
Oh, so they could have carried that.
They carry that
energy with them.
And I've done that with the feminine energy as well. And what will happen sometimes is, if they've been a male in a lot of lifetimes, in this lifetime they want to be a female, and what I've seen them do is try to break the glass ceiling, which means they go into roles that are mainly dominated by men, so that they can come in here with that vibration to be able to shift it. And I think women are very powerful, but it's also taking that masculine and just bulldozing it and not being as sensitive. So I see a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Like, I'm very feminine, and you're very feminine, but I know I've had past lives as I do carry male energy with me, I think.
I don't think I carry as much male.
You can't find things.
Oh, that's true.
I mean,
I don't ask for directions.
Where's the spice? It's right there.
It's right
Where?
there.
I don't see it. Right here.
Okay, sometimes I'm a male. In this lifetime. I do tell David that.
And then, you know how guys take their pants off at the end of the day, and one leg is inside out and one leg is right side out?
That's me.
Because you take your pants off with your feet. There you go. That's your male energy. Should I share more?
No, that's enough.
I'm teasing.
No, but really, you do. We laugh. I said, well, I'm the dude in this relationship, but it's not really true. I think we have both. So that's a little bit. Is that too much TMI for our listeners? Okay, so we want to give some tips again about how to figure out if you've had a past life. Okay. What are you really drawn to? What you're drawn to, maybe even as a kid. Are you still drawn to that now and you didn't have those experiences? So, like if someone really just loves horses. Oh, there's one, I'll talk about that. You may love horses, but you've never been around them, but you really want to be with them or be around them. I did a past life reading with somebody, and just came to me, I want to share this. I'm talking about her life. I said, oh, and then you died at this age. You were kicked in the head by a horse. She goes, oh my God, I'm glad this is recorded because I want to tell my family. She's always been fearful of horses, but didn't know why. And everyone told her that, get up there, get up. Well, she was killed by a horse in this life. She goes, I'm petrified.
There you go.
I'm petrified of it. So that just made me think about that story.
And that, I mean, obviously that made sense for her.
You're right.
If she had no reason to be that fearful.
There's absolutely no reason, but I will not get on a horse.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's another one. That's number 2. What are the fears you have for no reason? And I think we've talked about the horse, the woman that talked about, I don't want to die alone. Mm-hmm. But I think there's other things too of if you feel like you're not in control. Mm-hmm. So being on an airplane, like feeling like you
like
don't
me
have, like
on an airplane.
Yeah. Oh. But yours is different from your childhood. Could be a past life too. But a lot of times we feel like, what is it that I'm so fear based on, and what do I need to do to understand that more? Because for most people that there's a fear, a lot of times they have no reason other than I've had an experience and I don't know why I'm scared.
I feel like some of that, like the agoraphobia, where people won't leave their house.
Correct.
That definitely there has to be more to it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Like maybe they were told if they ever leave their house, they will be killed or whatever the story can be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you have an odd addiction? Collecting something that you love, but no clue why. And I think there are things that people collect, figurines from a country that you've never been to. Uh-huh. So, like I have some figurines from my mother-in-law, and she bought me, I think they're from France or something like that.
Okay.
I've never been there, and I just love them. I'm just drawn like, this is really cool. So I think there's things that people collect, and they don't know why. And they're
very drawn to.
Even clothing, what we wear as clothing, the texture, the colors, what we do in our home. I remember for a few years way back, I did everything Italian in the house. Everything had to be Italian. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So I think there's pieces of that we do. I never lived in Italy. I mean, I loved Italy, but it was there for a week.
Uh-huh. And Italian stuff is so humongous.
It is. It's
big. So grand.
It's so grand.
Big, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Again, what movies and time periods are you drawn to? Are you drawn to war movies? Are you drawn to spy movies? Are you drawn to certain cultures and backgrounds and history? There's so many of them out there that you can watch, and you're just like, I love this movie. I don't know why, but I just love this movie.
That reminds me of I have 2 movies that I just love. Well, one is Practical Magic,
right?
And I've loved that forever and ever. I used to watch Charmed.
Meeting Me was like,
anything with witches or mystical stuff, I am like all about it. Gladiator, is one of the other ones, and then that one with Tom Cruise where he's in Japan.
That's what I was just thinking of. You read my mind.
That's another one. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but
The Last Samurai.
Yes, those are some big ones for me. Like I can watch them over and over again. And
they're people being sliced, and but you're like, I want to be. I can't get my eyes off of this.
Like Gladiator, there's historical facts in that one, Marcus Aurelius, but it has to be, there's a reason, right. I think, that we get drawn to things.
We read a book called The Immortality Key. Mm-hmm. There was no doubt in my mind that I had been in that lifetime. we were listening to this book and we're walking, and I kept hitting Dana because I'm like, that's me. And it's based on a true story. I mean, it's
history.
It's history.
Yeah.
Again. How about just names that are not your typical name that you resonate with?
Like you hear it and you're like...
You hear it like, wow, that sounds...
Like maybe your name was that in a past
lifetime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that too. I remember when I was a kid, I kept thinking, I just love the name Sarah. I just have... Well, I think it was either a guide or a past life, because I was just like... And when I got older, it didn't resonate with me.
Uh-huh.
But Sarah's been around for a really long time.
So maybe she was a guide that was...
Guide or whatever, yeah. So those names.
Okay.
I think, this is a great story. I did a past life for this lady. And I kept seeing her with those, those Irish wolfhounds.
Yeah.
I said, okay, you're in Ireland, I think it was, obviously. I said, I see you with 3 Irish wolfhounds, and I'm seeing you as a woman, and this is what you're doing. And I'm talking about, I think if I remember right, it was about art and some other kind of thing. She goes, I love that place. And guess what? I've only had Irish wolfhounds as dogs.
And wow.
In this lifetime.
And yeah.
She goes, I'm only drawn to those kind of dogs.
Huh.
Is that not bizarre?
Yeah.
And I mean, how many people have Irish wolfhounds that you know?
Not many.
I don't think I've...
Only one.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah.
That we know.
But otherwise, I mean, and they're big dogs.
Yeah, I've never seen another one.
Yeah. So again, if you're drawn to certain type of things, food, clothing, movies, those may be a connection to your past life. The other thing I want to say, because this comes up a lot, I feel like an old soul. Mm-hmm. Or they'll go, I think she's an old soul. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a piece of that. And when you say an old soul, what does that mean? Usually it means they've had multiple lifetimes. Mm-hmm. I've said they're getting their PhD in spirituality and enlightenment.
Yeah, that usually means we've been really beat up in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Usually that's what it means, is like we've chosen some hard paths, which really...
helps you with that shadow. So you're here to put light on the things that we don't like about ourselves so we can grow and become more enlightened. And I think the other thing about past lives, and this is about intuition, I think people just know. It's that knowing. And we don't have to explain why we are connected to that. So if you play the drums or there's certain music or a flute, I think there is a connection to things that are familiar. So especially if you weren't raised around it or exposed to it, and so it's something like that. But we believe in past lives. I love doing readings for past lives. You can gain from it to be able to understand more about this lifetime and your relationships that you're with. And I think that's the biggest thing is, why am I so attached to this relationship? Or why can't I move forward? Or why am I drawn to certain things? And it really helps with fears. It helps with getting closure. It also helps you with knowing what you're here to learn in this lifetime. So thanks for joining us here on Spirited Straight Talk. I hope you enjoyed all the topics about past lives.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. Each Monday is a new episode of Spirited Straight Talk. Make sure you hit follow so you don't miss any of the guidance or bonus episodes. Your experience at the show means a lot to us, and we would love for you to leave a review or let us know about more topics you would like Deb to explore. You can also follow Deb on social media and connect with her website at debshepard.com. That's DEBSHEPPARD.com. If you want to join Deb on one of the shows or have a reading from her on the show, you can submit a request on the podcast page of her website. Thank you again, and see you next week.